Kristin Masters, and I'm the admin of the blog LGBT Meets SPQR. I want to thank you for joining me today as I discuss using the myth of the Argo in high school Latin curricula to explore Greco-Roman perceptions of gender, sexuality, and inclusivity in this classics classroom case study. Our objective for today is for our students to be able to explore topics of gender, sexuality, and inclusivity by analyzing and evaluating variations in primary sources in the myth of Jason the Argonauts. This unit was something I created during this pandemic year as we had no final exams and I had an extra week with my students, and I wanted to do something that was high interest to help them review. As you can see, there are tons of primary sources for the myth, and the good news is all of these sources are available for free online. The texts themselves can be found on the Perseus Project as well as the Latin Library. English versions are available on theoi.com, and there are even Latin translations of the Greek text available on Google Books. There are plenty of ways for your students to have meaningful interactions with these primary sources based on their ability. If they're ready, they can translate or read the text themselves. They can, again, also use Latin translations to be able to interact with the Greek text. Students can also interact meaningfully with texts that they might not even be ready for. They can practice identifying vocabulary in passages, recognizing tenses, prepositional phrases, verb endings, so on and so forth. They can also read English translations with comprehension questions of longer texts. Furthermore, you can create or adapt the story to fit your students' needs, whether you're using CI, TPRS, or writing a passage. It's a great way to make sure your students are comfortable using modeled sentences and sheltered vocabulary. That's something that I did with this unit. I had my students read Apollodorus's version of the myth. It's about 5 to 7 pages in English. I gave them comprehension questions. And then I broke down the myth into daily episodes, where, as you see on the left, I would put unfamiliar vocabulary in picture form and have the text below. Then students would select a topic of interest for additional research. And furthermore, we had an additional enrichment where we watched selections from Percy Jackson's Sea of Monsters movie, and they had to write an essay comparing the two Golden Fleece quests. As you can see, I broke it down into 6 episodes, so this entire unit lasted a little more than a week. On the first day, as we met the Argonauts, we saw just how diverse this cast of heroes was. You have Atalanta, the fastest athlete of the time. You have Phineas, the trans warrior with impenetrable skin. You have Castor and Pollux, the Gemini in future constellation. Hercules and Hylas, the same-sex couple, and we all know who Hercules is. Orpheus, the rock star of the ancient world. Polyphemus, an Argonaut with limited mobility. Pirithous and Theseus, another same-sex couple, and we all know Theseus and his Minotaur slaying exploits. And then we have the winged sons of the wind. So as we learned a little bit more about these Argonauts, my students, I gave them the thought question, who would be your Argonauts and why? So they had to pick a list of whether family, friends, fictional characters, or famous people, and then list what qualities that they had that would help them on a imagined quest. The students then had to skim the list of Hyginus's heroes and find a ratio using an Excel spreadsheet of demigod to mortal Argonauts. And then finally, their homework, they had to pick one of the Argonauts we learned about that day and translate a passage of them, which I had adapted from Hyginus and the Vatican mythographers. On the next day, as the Argonauts encountered the Amazons and the Doliones, again, the text is on the left that we did in class. The theme was women in the ancient world. Their thought question was, why did some authors include Atalanta as an Argonaut and others didn't? And after that discussion, students could research and report either on the treatment of women in Greek or Roman culture, the historical Amazons, or use the free online resource, the Beasley Archive, which is a database of Greek vase paintings, and find Amazon portrayals there. And their homework was to translate a passage about Amazons, again, adapted from Apollodorus. On the next day, as the Argonauts encountered the loss of Hylas, the blind prophet Phineas, and the clashing rocks episode, The theme was same-sex couples and disability. Again, the text is on the left that we did in class. Their thought question was to analyze the myth's treatment of disability by comparing the roles of the blind prophet Phineas, the Argonaut with limited mobility Polyphemus, and then the demigods with limb differences, the winged sons of the wind. After a meaningful discussion, the students had to then research and report on either the treatment of disability in the Greco-Roman world, same-sex couples in the Greco-Roman world, using my blog LGBT meets SPQR, or the dangerous beauty theme of gender and abduction myths, also using my blog. Their homework was to translate a myth about Hercules' 12 labors, again adapted from the myth of Hyginus. On the next day, as we get to Colchis and we meet Medea, the theme is xenophobia and how she is portrayed as a Waynifica. Again, the text again is on the left. The thought question of the day was, how are foreign women treated differently in Greco-Roman culture? Can you list others who are treated this way? And then they had a couple of options. They could either create a creative project where they have a quest myth involving 5 characters and an episode for each one that showcases their special skill. Or they could research and report about another woman, usually an enemy of Rome, like Cleopatra, Zenobia, or Boudica. For homework, they had to translate the myth of Medea and find out what is to come. The next day, as the Argonauts went home, they encountered the Sirens, the robot Talos, and their quote happily ever after. The story again is on the left. The theme was technology and trade. So the thought question is, why do books or movies never show what happens after the quest, right? The fallout. And then students had to research and report on either the archaeological significance of the Ulabarun wreck, the Antikythera device, or the different versions of the root of the Argo. Their homework was to read about the myth of Orpheus and Eurydice, again adapted from the Vatican mythographers. On the last day, the quote happily ever after, you see on the text on the left, the thought question is based on the theme of xenophobia and citizenship rights. Our thought question is, what happens when heroes that we look up to don't live up to our expectations of them? Why do we expect heroes to be perfect? Students had to research and report either on the rights of women in Greece or Rome, citizenship rights in Greece or Rome, or the Constitutio Antoniniana. And their homework is to translate selections from the 12 tables. As you can see, this myth is such a perfect opportunity for students to gain a deeper understanding of the complex topics in Greco-Roman culture, as well as to practice their critical research skills, their critical thinking, and their critical writing skills. Thank you so much and have a great day.